Who's going to rush the passer for the Lions on Sunday against Tennessee? It's anybody's guess.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, it's a Friday edition of Locked On Lions. Welcome in on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt Derry with you, your host here on Locked On Lions. On a Friday, October 25th and a Saturday, October 26th, we got Lions football on Sunday at Ford Field as the team will take on the Tennessee Titans, the 1-5 Tennessee Titans, Rob Otto's Tennessee Titans, coming to town. The Lions have never beaten the Titans since they became the Titans from the Houston Oilers. 0-6 lifetime. Time to end that streak as Detroit looks to stay in the NFC North top spot and in first place. A lot to discuss and cover here on Locked On Lions. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. Please subscribe and watch us for free on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Shout out to our everydayers who are out there that either watch or listen to the podcast daily. Got to give a shout to my people who watch the pod every day. Mark and Terry Shell was hanging with the Shells last night for dinner. Amazing people and great friends. They love the pod. Mark will be at the game on Sunday at Ford Field for Lions and Titans. We're going to have Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus in our last segment today. Just get a little update on the PFF situation with the Lions, some grades. Talk to Dalton about pass rushing situations now that Aiden Hutchinson's gone. We'll get into everything Lions related with Dalton coming up momentarily here on Locked On Lions. We are brought to you today by our friends at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code all lowercase Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You can follow us on Twitter, Derry Speaks at Locked On Lions, Matt Derry Facebook fan page, and all that rigmarole. All right, the news of the day today is interesting because Josh Paschal is the one guy that you knew the Lions could count on to be an edge rusher with all the injuries that they've had. Going into Sunday, you knew, all right, Josh Paschal will be out there, but we're without our top four edge rushers. Aiden Hutchinson, done for the year. Marcus Davenport, done for the year. Derek Barnes, done for the year. John Kaminsky, likely done for the year. But at least we got Paschal. No, you don't. According to MLive.com, Josh Paschal told MLive, and I believe it was either Kyle Meinke or Ben Raven, good job by those guys, that he went in for a post-cancer visit to the doctor. Something's going on with him from a health perspective, and he's not going to be able to play in Sunday's game against Tennessee. The Lions are calling it an illness. Dan Campbell said they're working through something with Josh, but he'll be back next week against Green Bay. So, who does that leave for the Lions to play at defensive end? I mean, there were times last week that Levi Onwuzurike lined up as an edge rusher next to DJ Reader and Aleem McNeil. We have seen Trevor Nowaski, the pride of Saginaw, get his opportunity out there to be an edge rusher. Dan Campbell said today, James Houston is going to play and have to play a big role this Sunday against the Titans. Okay. He's been a ghost for 2 years. And the recently added from the Bengals practice squad, no relation to number 11, Isaiah Thomas, is also going to have to play a lot. He hasn't played in an NFL game since 2022. Also, the Lions will be elevating Al-Qadin Muhammad from the practice squad. You want me to talk about AQM? Don't know much about him. So Muhammad, Houston, Thomas are pretty much all that's left. Again, throw in Nowaski. Maybe Jack Campbell rushes from the edge. Maybe the Lions blitz. Who knows? But that's all that's left at the edge position going into Sunday's showdown with the 1-5 Titans. Now, the good news is that if you caught yesterday's crossover episode with Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans, who does a great job. I'm a big Tyler fan. Right tackle position for the Titans right now with Nicholas Petit-Frere and Leroy Watson is absolutely a train wreck. It's horrible. So that's a good sign. The Titans are having major issues at right tackle right now. So it might not even matter. And so there you have it. So Paschal will be back for Green Bay, dealing with an issue from previous when he had cancer. He talked about talked with the doctors, and it's a personal matter. But it's amazing what a mash unit this Lions edge rushing room is. But here's the good news. They're very well coached. Aaron Glenn has done a spectacular job with the defense. Terrell Williams is as good a D-line coach as you'll find. But again, this does kind of ratchet up the conversation that the Lions probably have to go out and not just get one, but two edge rushers before November 5th's NFL trade deadline. It's that simple. I know what the Lions are saying. I know Dan Campbell's talking about next man up. And from right now, we're going to do this from internally. They've got to make moves. And you heard yesterday on the show, Tyler from Locked On Titans talked about it. Harold Landry, he doesn't think the Lions or the Titans are going to trade, but it's a possibility. And Arden Key is another guy that with NFL experience, with a lot of experience, coming off the edge, has done it before. He's a guy that you're going to watch this weekend, wearing number 49. Started in Jacksonville, now in Tennessee, that you're going to have to keep an eye on. And again, you got to root for these bad teams to keep losing. If the Saints keep losing, if the Browns keep losing, Saints with Cam Jordan, Browns with Myles Garrett, and with Zadarius Smith, I still think Azeez Ojulari, watch that name. If the Giants lose Monday night against the Steelers, and we know how Pittsburgh plays in primetime, they usually win. Watch a guy like Azeez Ojulari for the Lions. Maybe Ojulari and Key are two guys the Lions go get. It's not a home run like Max Crosby and Myles Garrett, but it would be good enough probably to at least pad the room with more people. And here's the other thing. Lions secondary is getting better. That safety room with Brian Branch and with Kirby Joseph is really good. And the Lions offense is really starting to hit its stride right now. So Aiden Hutchinson's been gone a couple of weeks, yet many people still believe the team to beat in the NFC is the Lions. Look at the rest of the NFC. Did you watch last night's game? The Minnesota Vikings, who just 10 days ago were in first place and cruising, undefeated, lost to the Lions, and last night lost again, this time to the Rams 28-20. Our boy, Stat Padford, had a hell of a game. Threw the ball great. He had that one play where he ducked the defenders and threw a touchdown pass to Cooper Kupp was unbelievable play. But the Vikings their secondary looked very, very suspect last night. And yes, they got screwed on the no face mask call in the end zone on the safety, but they were still down 8, having to go 98 yards to try to tie the game. Hadn't played a crisp game at all outside of Justin Jefferson's 100 yards receiving. That was a really bad call, by the way. I cannot believe that in this day and age of technology, we can check in a baseball game 50 different angles on if a ball is fair or foul. But in the NFL, billion-dollar industry, nobody on the field, the umpire in front, the referee behind Sam Darnold, could see that Darnold's face mask was grabbed off the edge from the Rams defense. Amazing to me that was not called. Jared Verse got him or whomever. That was insane. That's a face mask. I'm sorry. Now, it's good for the Lions. We love that. Vikings lost. But how is that not reviewable? How can you not throw the challenge flag on something like that? You throw a challenge flag on, whether or not his 2 feet were down or whether it was a fumble or not. But my goodness, that was crazy. Okay. Coming up next here on Locked On Lions, a surprising stat going into this game that I did not know about the Tennessee Titans, the Lions' opponent, on Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock. Kevin Kugler, oh, the Lions are roaring. And Daryl Johnston on the call Sunday on Fox at 1 o'clock. We are back after this on Locked On Lions. And Locked On Lions today is brought to you by Zbiotics. Pre-alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. You're hungover, let's just say it. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember, to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. It is that simple, all right? Drink this pre-alcohol product. It's awesome, and that way you're not feeling bad the next day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. And hey, ladies and gentlemen, Locked On Lions, brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. Daily fantasy sports that is so much fun, and it's you against the stat projections. You're not going up against anybody else. Over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings at PrizePicks, which has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everybody. Here's what you have to do. Just pick more than or less than on at least 2-player projections. 2 players, you pick them, their projections, for a shot to win up to 100 times your money. Run your game all season long at PrizePicks, all right? It's the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, too. So your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. What do you think about this weekend, all right? Jahmyr Gibbs going to go rush for over 75.5 yards in the game. You can bet on that at PrizePicks, all right? Download the app today. Use code LockedOnNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So the one tweet that I look forward to every week that is really, really good, Tim Twentyman from DetroitLions.com, who has covered the Lions for many, many years, does a really good job. We got to have him on the pod soon. It's been a while. Tim Twentyman does a chart of offense and defense between the Lions and their opponent and what they rank offensively. So points per game, passing defense, run defense. And he has that chart each and every Tuesday or Wednesday. Tim puts that out. And I did not realize this. Despite the fact that the Tennessee Titans are 1-5, they are the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL in terms of yards per game given up. So I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, they're 1-5. They suck, right? They've lost to like the Dolphins. I mean, they've had some really bad losses. They haven't played great teams yet per se. They were up in the second half on Indianapolis. They blew that game. They lost in Buffalo last week. They've been really bad in the fourth quarter. But the Tennessee Titans defense on paper is not that bad. Lions love to run between the tackles. Well, Tavondre Sweat, second-round pick this year, and Jeffrey Simmons, who, of course, is a total stud, are their interior defensive linemen. A guy like Harold Landry can get to the quarterback, right? They just traded for Jerome Baker, the middle linebacker from the Seahawks, after trading Ernest Jones. Baker's a good football player. Kenneth Murray is their leading tackler, who they got from the Chargers. Good linebacker. They've got Quandre Diggs, our boy, playing free safety. Come on, we love Quandre. L'Jarius Sneed was paid a lot of money by the Titans to come over from Kansas City. That was a guy we talked about the Lions going after and getting. Roger McCreary, who's a second-round pick from a couple of years ago. Good nickelback. They've got some talent on that defense. So while we sit here and say, oh, man, Lions are going to blow out the Titans this week, this won't even be close. Tennessee's terrible. Mason Rudolph starting at quarterback. Tony Pollard's done nothing. Calvin Ridley might not even play Sunday. They've already traded DeAndre Hopkins. Yet, I'm telling you, this Tennessee Titans defense has played well. We're going to ask our man Dalton, coming up next from PFF, Dalton Wasserman, is this for real? Is the Titans defense really not that bad? Or is it just they haven't given up a lot of yards because there's been a ton of short fields? Levis has turned the ball over a ton, Mason Rudolph as well. And the Titans defense is not exactly they've been dealt a bad hand at times, but they've stood up and not been too bad. But that offense cannot score. They've had one game so far out of 6 where they've scored over 20 points. All right, so let's get to Dalton Wasserman. We will do that coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. Big game on Sunday for the Lions. Can get a 2-game lead in the division with a win, they would go to 6-1. Minnesota's now at 5-2, so it'll be a full game lead. I just like the way the Lions are playing, but this will be a good test against Jeffrey Simmons and Sweat, those guys this weekend. Hopefully it's not a look ahead game to Green Bay. I don't think it will be. I do not think it will be. So we'll have to wait and see. No, I'm not going to talk about Jamison Williams anymore. He's suspended for 2 games. He's going to serve the suspension. He put out a statement yesterday, which didn't really answer any questions. He said he doesn't know what's going on and how this happened, but he's not going to contest it. This whole week has been very weird. I just want to get J-Mo back in a couple of weeks for the Houston game and see him shine, because I know he can do it. All right, let's get to Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus. We will do that coming up next right here on a Friday, Locked On Lions. All right, everybody, FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. World Series tonight, game 1. You want to put some money down on the Dodgers or the Yankees and what you think might happen in this World Series, you can do so at FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. That's the beauty of FanDuel. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Go to FanDuel.com. Big card, Michigan State, Saturday night. And then, of course, you got Lions, Titans, and everything going on Sunday with the NFL. Get in on the action with FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. All right, as promised, folks, Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus joins us. We love talking to Dalton, of course, from PFF, an analyst and the co-host of the college football podcast at PFF. By the way, Pro Football Focus has you covered all season long. Best data, tools, and analysis in the game. Please sign up for PFF Plus today, which I have, to unlock all of their famous player grades and premium stats. Push to the playoffs in your fantasy league with in-season tools and award-winning rankings from fantasy expert Nathan Yonke, and stay connected to the next generation of talent with the best NFL draft coverage coming up in the spring on the planet. No matter what you're looking for, PFF Plus has you covered. Sign up PFF Plus today for less than $10 per month. Got to do this at PFF Plus. All right, Dalton, if I didn't do that, Dave Salfaro would have really yelled at me, but it's great to see you, buddy. Lions off to a 5-1 start, but you and I were talking off air. Who the heck is going to rush the passer this Sunday?
Yeah, that's the big mystery right now, right? Obviously, the Aiden Hutchinson injury. You've got Josh Paschal out. You've got James Houston's been out. Marcus Davenport's been out. I mean, you're just running out of names out there on the edge. And obviously, you're getting a pretty good interior rush with DJ Reader and Aleem McNeil, and that helps. But you have to wonder who's going to step up. Is it Isaac Ukwu? Do you move Jack Campbell back to the edge a little bit like they did last year, maybe at least on rundowns? I mean, they're really hurting. Does Aaron Glenn decide to blitz a little bit more, maybe with a Malcolm Rodriguez? So I don't know what the answer is right now, but it's getting worse and worse outside on that edge when you talk about the Lions' ability to just rush forward and get home. And this is a team that, they've been a lot better, way better in coverage this year, mainly due to their the play. They're great safeties. You've got Brian Branch back there and Kirby Joseph playing great too, but still needs some help in coverage. Got to help these corners out sometimes. So Aaron Glenn, I think right now it's a fine balance between blitzing more and sending 4 and picking his spots to do each.
PFF loves Aiden Hutchinson. And look, everybody loves Aiden Hutchinson. He was on his way to being Defensive Player of the Year. As far as pressure rate, pass rush, win rate, everything that PFF looks at, how have the Lions been without him the last couple of weeks, or really just 1 week? And how do you forecast it moving forward?
It sure feels like they need to make some sort of move to get somebody in, right? Because you talk about, they were even tearing up Dallas when Hutchinson was in, but it dropped to their lowest pass rush grade of the season against Minnesota. And you got teams like Minnesota and some other teams that they're going to be in playoff contention with that they have good offensive lines, right? Good teams have good offensive lines. Minnesota's got a good offensive line, and they didn't get a whole lot of pass rush going. And I think on both sides, that's why you saw such a high scoring game. So I really have to think, I don't know if it's a big move or more of a moderate range move. I've heard Zadarius Smith from the Browns mentioned a lot as a match, but it feels like they need to make a move to just supplement it with one starting caliber edge rusher out here, because right now it's not a whole lot of guys left to get the job done. And I know Aaron Glenn wants to help those guys in coverage as much as possible. I don't know if we'll see the big names, probably not like the Max Crosbys of the world, but a Zadarius Smith, maybe when he gets healthy, a Jadeveon Clowney makes some sense. There's got to be somebody out there coming off the edge and help, because it's going to become a problem come playoff time. If you can't get to the quarterback and those guys have clean pockets all day, they can hurt you.
Yesterday, Tyler Rowland was on with us from Locked On Titans. We do the Thursday crossover. I mentioned Harold Landry. He said, I'm not so sure the Titans are ready to part with him yet, even though this seems like kind of a wasted season now. You got Mason Rudolph playing quarterback. You've got Levis hurt. Hopkins is gone. They traded Ernest Jones the other day. And Arden Key is somebody that Tyler thought could be more realistic. How do you look at maybe that Landry or Key duo? And are either of those guys worthy of the Lions making a phone call?
I think so. I mean, they're both good players, especially Landry when he's healthy. I'm not sure who the Titans are looking to keep around long term, because they're really in the middle of a hard rebuild, and they need a quarterback too. Like you mentioned, those two guys that are playing. But no, I think any help they can get, it wouldn't even shock me that much if it's going to be lesser name moves like that. Maybe the Lions make 2 or 3 moves, honestly, just to kind of take some flyers and get guys in here. Because right now you're talking about they're winning right now with their offense, but you can't run practice squad guys out there every single week off the edge. So even either of those 2 guys, or maybe even both of them, would definitely help, being that they're just more, it's just, again, starting caliber players is what you're looking for. Are you going to replace Aiden Hutchinson? No, there's probably only one guy that they would even think about that could, maybe Max Crosby, or, I mean, it doesn't sound like the Browns are willing to part with Myles Garrett. You'd probably get Smith before you got Garrett. So you might even be able to replace it with maybe 2 or 3 guys if they can get him at the right price. But I think those 2 players, either of them would help.
Dalton Wasserman with us from Pro Football Focus at PFF_Dalton, if you want to follow him on Twitter. This game this Sunday is interesting. I want to talk about the Titans, but first, the Viking win last week. Offense is clicking right now. The Jared Goff numbers are through the roof, insane over the last 3 weeks. Is he in your MVP discussion right now?
I think he has to be. Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be number 1, but he's been so raging hot over the last 4 games that he's really inserted himself in that. After struggling for the first 2 weeks, I mean, talk about completing over 80% of his passes. And I like Jared Goff is so good within the foundations of this offense, right? When they get to run the ball, when they get to play action, and it's not just dropping back trying to throw the football like some other teams need to do, right? There's other teams that just, like the Bengals, that have to just drop back and throw it. The Lions don't have to do that. You see Goff getting comfortable, clean pockets back there with arguably the best offensive line in football, zinging balls over the middle of the field. I'll tell you, sometimes I watch the Lions and I go, man, there's no more sure play in football than that play action straight drop to that 15-yard in route to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, it's consistent. The execution right now is flawless, and I probably wouldn't put him number 1. It's hard not to put Lamar Jackson number 1, but Goff would certainly be in that mix.
Take me through. It's interesting. It's now teams are now 0-5 the week after they play the Lions. Obviously, Dallas doesn't count because they had a bye week. Minnesota last night again goes out to LA, plays the Rams, played a decent game. We could argue about that safety call. I talked about it before you came on, but what does that say about the Lions and how physical they are? And I know there's not a PFF stat for it, but teams after they play the Lions seem pretty beat up and can't win a football game. It's wild, huh?
I think what it speaks to really is, if there's one thing I could point to, it's that, so they're second in our overall grading, right? Our grades have them as the second best team in football. And it's not just the amount of physicality they play with, which of course it is. The offensive line, it's as physical as it gets. But I think it's just how good they are and the amount of effort that it takes to beat them. Even the one game that they lost against Tampa Bay went all the way down to the wire. It takes so much effort to beat this team and to really out-effort this team the way that Dan Campbell has built them. And he's brought in, those high character guys that go in, and even if they're not the best players in the league, they're his guys, and they play at 110% every single play, all the way down to the wire. We have yet to see a game, obviously, this year where the Lions went out there and just got whacked because Dan Campbell and the attitude of this team just won't let them. So it already takes so much effort to beat them, and it's really been that way for 2 solid years now. Once they started figuring this culture out in the second half of 2022, it's just never slowed down. It takes so much effort to beat them, on top of the physicality that they play with on the offensive line especially.
By the way, I mentioned the Vikings. This is 2 straight weeks now Sam Darnold has lost. Looking a little bit more down to earth. Are teams starting to figure him out now in that system? I'm not saying the Lions dominated Darnold, but he didn't have his greatest game. And then last night again, lost and was outplayed by Matthew Stafford. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a couple of things happening in Minnesota. I'll start with the offense. They are right now riding this big wave in the first quarter where their offense looks fantastic. They talk about the first 15 plays or even the first 2 drives, right? And the Vikings are elite early in games when it comes to jumping out ahead and really having a good game plan, getting into it. But it's slowing down severely as you get later in the game, the second half of these games. They're really right now looking like a first half offense. And what happened against the Rams is just didn't have any other answers outside of Justin Jefferson. And Jefferson's going to get his, but slowing down all those other guys, Jordan Addison and Aaron Jones in the run game and some of those guys in the slot, that's really a big key, right? There's no just stopping Justin Jefferson. That's not a thing, right? But if you slow down everybody else, especially the run game, and I would be very concerned about this Christian Darrisaw injury at left tackle. We'll see where that goes. And then I think defensively, you have a unit that was being coached better than the sum of its parts, especially in the secondary. They don't have many elite talents in their secondary, and you've seen the last 2 teams they've played, the Lions and the Rams, they just have absolute dudes out there at receiver that can win one-on-one. And when you have that and you have quarterbacks who are comfortable throwing into the blitz, then you've got some problems with the Vikings defense. So can they pick it back up? Absolutely. But they got to make their success last longer in games than the first quarter and a half.
All right, so the Lions get the Titans on Sunday. Tennessee's 1-5. We've all seen the Will Levis highlights that pretty much cost them in the first couple of weeks. Just stupid throws. He's hurt. Mason Rudolph's in. One thing I haven't mentioned on the show, and I brought it up before you came on, they're number 1 in the league in defense in terms of yards allowed. Is that just because they've had short fields they've had to deal with due to Levis? Or, you think about the Titans, Jeffrey Simmons is good. We mentioned some other guys, but is that sustainable? What's that all about?
Yeah, no, it doesn't really line up with our grading either. I think it's a big part. When you look at some of the teams that they've played, they played Joe Flacco and they played a decent game against him. They've made some teams really slow things down. But when you look at the teams that they've played and you look at the way that they've played compared to, and you mentioned the turnovers too, there's a lot of short fields involved in that. Even last week against Buffalo, there was a turnover on downs that really flipped the game over. The Titans as a whole, they have this thing right now where there's stretches of games, say even 15 to 20 minutes, where they look like a decent football team. Like they look, and then there's just stretches of games on both sides where it just all stagnates on them. It all falls apart, especially offensively. But the defense, too, it's kind of this high and low thing. They're physical. Their defensive line is pretty good, especially against the run. There's 2 big guys in there, Jeffrey Simmons and T'Vondre Sweat. But they're too inconsistent to find themselves winning ball games, right? They've lost 3 games by 1 score, and they just can't finish games, and they can't make the winning plays to finish games. So the number 1 in total yards thing, it is kind of deceptive because they played some run-heavy teams. They've played some teams with lesser quarterbacks. I think that's going to swing back down a little bit here, probably starting this week, honestly.
You mentioned before about the Lions. You have them as PFF has them in terms of your grading as the second best team, I'm assuming behind Kansas City. Who's after them, and how do you view the NFC right now, Dalton, as we're 6-7 weeks into this thing?
Actually, it's Baltimore number 1 right now for the grading. Wow. And then Kansas City, it's weird because it's like a balanced thing. And some people have talked about, their offense isn't quite as flashy as it used to be. KC in the grading sits at number 5, but it's a pretty tight battle. Right behind them, you've got San Francisco, who despite their record is still very highly graded. They're just losing a lot of one-score games and situational football. Pittsburgh, with the way their defense plays, is very high for us. Houston and Minnesota, as you might expect in that group too. But, it's Baltimore 1, and then just a shade behind them is Detroit. And I think you're looking at teams up there that they most of them have balance, right? I know the Steelers are looking for some offensive balance, but their defense is so good that the standard's a little bit different. But you talk about teams that are getting it done on both sides of the ball. You're not going to see a whole lot of one-sided teams near the top of our overall grading because, they only have half a good team, right? I think about a team like the Cardinals, whose offense is really good and their defense is just not. So I think that's the big thing with all the best teams in football. Plus, the 49ers are 3-4, but they have so many injuries and stuff. You have balance. You have this mix of offense and defense, and it's complementary football. And I think the Lions, despite the lack of a pass rush, have been doing that lately. So I expect them to stay near the top of that. They have such a good base with the quarterback and their offensive line, and even some things that are working for them on defense. And I would expect them still to get a win over the Titans. You got a team that's second in our rankings to Tennessee that's second to the bottom. So it's really – it should be a mismatch, and they just have to go out there and execute.
All right, I'm putting you on the spot, and we don't need a lot of talk on it, but you're the co-host of the College Football Podcast. I know your co-host is probably livid after last night's Kyle McCord performance. But who wins Saturday night, Michigan or Michigan State?
I would say Michigan. I still think their defense can dominate that game. Aiden Childs, I believe, leads the nation in turnover-worthy plays for Michigan State. Just offensively, I like what Jonathan Smith has going there. They've made some progress. They're definitely more physical. I do like that, especially on defense in the front seven. I think they're more physical than they were last year at Michigan State. But Michigan's defense, they've lost some close games. Obviously, the Illinois game, their offense just shut down because the quarterback situation is what it is there. But I think Michigan's defense will still be enough to carry them to that win.
Dalton, great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much as always.
Appreciate it as always, Matt.
Dalton Wasserman with us from PFF. We will be with you on Sunday following the game for Lions and Titans. Don't forget the live postcast as well with Jake Riepma on Locked on Sports Detroit. We'll talk to you again on Sunday.